can you ever become free if you're still living inside someone else's past? By the end of this story, you'll understand why families, relationships, and even your own identity can become prisons built by decisions you never made. And you'll start noticing the invisible inheritance shaping your own life. But be warned, this isn't just literary analysis. It's a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They only show what we've trained ourselves not to see. The moment you recognize the pattern, you can no longer pretend it's fate. You're left with something far more terrifying: responsibility. Most people think The House of the Seven Gables is a haunted house novel. Look closer. Nathaniel Hawthorne's Gothic classic is actually a psychological investigation into inherited guilt, family trauma, silence, identity, and the invisible patterns that pass from one generation to the next. Houses don't remember. People do. At least, that's what most of us believe. But what if a house could become something else? A prison built by old decisions. A monument to guilt. A place where people inherit consequences without inheriting the crime. Most people think The House of the Seven Gables is a haunted house story. It isn't. The real haunting isn't supernatural. It's psychological. Because by the end of this story, you'll understand why some families spend generations paying for mistakes they never made, and why your own life may contain rooms built by someone else's past. Stay with this story, because the house Hawthorne may look disturbingly familiar. Houses don't people do. At least, that's what most of us believe. But what if a house could become something else? Not haunted by ghosts, haunted by guilt, haunted by promises nobody kept, haunted by mistakes made so long ago that the people suffering from them were never even alive when they happened. Most people think The House of the Seven Gables is there looking for ghosts. Hawthorne is looking at something much darker. The way families inherit emotional prisons. The way yesterday quietly becomes tomorrow. Stay with this story, because by the end, you'll stop asking whether curses are real and start asking whether you've been living inside one without realizing it. Because sometimes, the house is trapping you. It's not made of wood. It's made of beliefs. The house that never let go before we meet Hawthorne's characters. Meet Daniel. Daniel grows up hearing the same sentence. People in this family always struggle. Money disappears. Dreams don't last. Success never sticks. Nobody says it's a curse. They call it reality. By 25, Daniel notices something strange. Every time an opportunity appears, he hesitates, not because he can't succeed, because somewhere deep inside, he expects failure. That's exactly what Hawthorne builds with the Pyncheon house. Long before anyone walks through its doors, its story already controls the people inside it. Not because walls have, because stories do. And stories repeated long enough start feeling like destiny. The heaviest burdens are often the ones you never chose. The original debt the house begins with ambition, power, greed. Colonel Pyncheon wants land. Another man stands in his way. Then comes accusation, punishment, death, and one final warning, a curse. Most people stop ghost story, mystery, superstition. Hawthorne doesn't, because the real curse isn't spoken. It's inherited, generation after generation. People begin living inside consequences, without understanding where they came from. Look at modern families. Sometimes nobody remembers who started the silence. Nobody remembers who broke the trust. Nobody remembers who taught everyone to hide emotions. The pattern survives, long after the explanation disappears. Like cracks spreading through a foundation, the people upstairs blame the floor. The problem began underneath. Sarah's silent house. Sarah's family never argues. At least, not loudly. Instead, people disappear emotionally. Someone gets hurt. Nobody talks. Someone apologizes. Nobody believes it. The silence becomes tradition. As an adult, Sarah notices something disturbing. Every relationship ends the same way. She doesn't fight. She withdraws. Just like home. Then someone asks her, "Why don't you ever say what you're feeling?" She doesn't know. Because the habit became invisible. This is how emotional inheritance works. Not through DNA. Through repetition. Children become fluent in emotional languages before they ever learn to question them. Hawthorne understood this nearly 2 centuries before psychology gave it a name. Families don't just pass down eye color. They pass down emotional habits. Then we meet Clifford. He's one of the novel's years of suffering leave him emotionally suspended. The world is moving. He doesn't. Have you ever noticed how trauma bends time? Some people live in today. Others keep replaying yesterday. One betrayal. One humiliation. One loss. And suddenly, years pass without the mind fully leaving the room where it happened. Clifford isn't simply imprisoned, he's imprisoned by unfinished time. Modern psychology sees something similar. The brain often revisits unresolved pain, trying to complete what never received closure. But repetition isn't resolution. It's an echo, and echoes become louder. Inside quiet houses, the past doesn't need chains to imprison you. It only needs repetition. Every dark mind documentary needs a psychological villain. This one is fascinating. Judge Pyncheon. He represents something we rarely notice. Power disguised as respect, he looks respectable. Successful. Honorable. Everything appears polished. But appearances become camouflage. This is not unusual. History repeatedly shows something uncomfortable. The most dangerous people rarely introduce themselves as villains. They arrive wearing legitimacy, title status, reputation, authority. That's why people obey. Not because they're forced, because certainty often wears expensive clothing. And once authority becomes tradition, questioning it starts feeling dangerous. Power survives longest when it disguises itself as tradition. James becomes the fixer. His brother makes mistakes. James repairs them. His father creates problems. James solves them. His family expects sacrifice. James delivers it. Then one day, someone asks, "When did this become your responsibility?" He can't answer. Because nobody officially assigned him the role. He inherited it. Like carrying a suitcase, without remembering who handed it to you. Maybe you've carried one too. The responsible child. The peacemaker. The successful sibling. The disappointment. The strong one. These roles feel permanent. Until someone does, then Phoebe arrives. Notice what Hawthorne does. He doesn't destroy the house. He changes the atmosphere. That's psychologically brilliant. Real transformation rarely begins by demolishing everything. It begins when someone behaves differently within the same system. Phoebe doesn't erase history. She interrupts it. She brings warmth into stagnation, movement into paralysis, life into repetition. Think about your own life. One person refusing an old pattern can quietly change an entire family. An honest conversation, one apology, one boundary, one decision. Small changes don't always look dramatic until years later. You realize the cycle ended there. Healing begins when someone refuses to inherit the story unchanged. The house inside your head. Now look around your own life. Not your building, your invisible house. Which room contains fear? Which room contains shame? Which room contains expectations? Which room contains silence? Which room did someone else build? Before you were born, we inherit phrases. We don't cry. People like us don't become successful. Don't trust strangers. Keep everything inside. Some protect us. Some imprison us. The difficult part is discovering which is which. Because inherited beliefs rarely announce themselves. They simply become your voice. Until one day, you realize it. Think back to Daniel, Sarah, James. Different lives, different houses, one pattern, inherited burdens. The Pyncheon house wasn't truly haunted. The people were not by spirits, by unfinished history. And maybe that's Hawthorne's greatest warning. A family doesn't need a curse to repeat the same pain. It only needs people who never question the story they inherited. One day, someone will inherit maybe not the building, the emotional one, the beliefs, the habits, the fears, the expectations. The question is, what will they find inside? Another locked room, another silent hallway, another burden nobody remembers creating, or evidence that someone finally opened the windows. Because perhaps the house of the Seven Gables was never asking whether old houses can become haunted. It was asking whether human beings can spend generations living inside someone else's unfinished story. Without realizing, they've had the key all along. The front door was never locked. The past simply convinced them they weren't allowed to leave. Freedom isn't demolition. It's renovation. You don't burn the house down. You open a window. You let light touch floorboards that haven't felt warmth in centuries. You speak a truth that was never spoken. You break a silence that outlived its creator. And slowly, the house stops being a monument. It becomes a home again. Not because the past is erased, but because you finally stopped letting it write your future. The key was never hidden. It was always in your hand, waiting for you to stop asking permission, to turn it,